Hey, it's Craig. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Canadian History X early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. Greetings and welcome to another episode of Canadian History X. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can. For $3 a month, just go to patreon.com/CanadaEHX. As well, you can donate to the podcast by going to CanadaEHX.com and clicking Donate. Don't forget, I have two other podcasts you can enjoy, Pucks and Cups, which releases every Sunday, and From John to Justin, which releases every Friday, available on all podcast platforms. Today, I'm speaking with Martin Parnell. He was a really interesting person to talk to. He holds numerous Guinness World Records for running. He's ran marathons every single day for weeks on end, and recently he completed the film The Secret Marathon. It tells the story of a woman who ran a marathon in Afghanistan, the first woman to ever do so. And it also follows his journey to Afghanistan along with director Kate McKenzie, who I will be talking to a week from today. It's a really interesting story. He was really interesting to talk to, so let's get right to it. I guess first question, after taking part in so many marathons, you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in, I think, 21 hours. Was the run in Afghanistan something that you were kind of the most apprehensive about?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, apprehensive for a whole bunch of reasons. Just even getting to Afghanistan was a marathon unto itself. Just getting the visa, the insurance. There was so many unknowns. Obviously, security number one. Just totally concerned about what could happen. And I try to do the best I can with risk mitigation. Is this even feasible? Well, the year before, a group of 10 international runners had gone. So in my world, it is feasible. But again, going to a place like Afghanistan, you just don't know. And so, as I say, getting to the race itself was a major challenge other than doing the marathon.
And then the run, was it especially significant for you because you had just recovered from the blood clot in your brain?
It was absolutely. It was probably the most significant marathon that I've done. Not in terms of trying to set a record or going to a certain location like Boston, but the reasons I went and I was literally, I think I was driven to go to Afghanistan to support the girls and women over there who run for freedom and equality. As you mentioned, I was very sick. I had a massive clot on the brain back in early 2015. I was in recovery for a number of months, almost a year. But in October 2015, my wife, Sue, showed me an article about the very first marathon in Afghanistan, which involved a young woman named Zainab. And when I read the challenges she faced doing her training, for me, when I'm out training, it's the weather, it's blisters, it might be hydration, nutrition. But for Zainab, it was being called a prostitute as she ran and men throwing chunks of rock at her. And it's something that just hit me viscerally. I just thought, that is so unfair. Why are they picking on women, not men, women, to stop them running? And it was like a switch went off. And I said to my wife, Sue, if I get better and if I can run again and run a marathon, I'm going to go over to Afghanistan and support the women and girls to run the next marathon. And 1 year later, I was on a plane to Kabul.
And the screener that I watched, a lot of it kind of focused on you and Kate getting ready to do the run. And one of the things that she had to prepare for was wearing the hijab while she was running in Alberta. So that's one preparation. What other things did you guys have to do to kind of prepare to not only run in such a different culture, but in such a different climate than like Calgary and Cochrane?
Absolutely. Like the location of the marathon in Afghanistan is in a town named Bamiyan, and it's in the foothills of the Hindu Kush Mountains. In fact, in some ways, it's quite similar to Cochrane. It's in the foothills. In Cochrane, I think we're about 4,500 feet elevation, but Bamiyan is 9,000 feet. And so one of the concerns was the altitude. I just didn't know how I would fare running between 9 and 10,500 feet. And what I found is when I was over there and did some training runs before the marathon is my chest just tightened up that first 10 minutes. I just almost couldn't continue. like the tightness around the chest. It did slowly improve, but just running at that altitude was probably the major challenge.
Yeah, I remember in the film you stood at the Highwood Pass, I believe, and you said that that was like the highest point that you could run in Canada, and Afghanistan was double that height.
Well, exactly. I mean, we couldn't get higher than that. It's the highest paved pass in Canada, and it still wasn't close to where we were going to Afghanistan. So just imagine going to Afghanistan, going to Bamiyan in the foothills of the Hindu Kush Mountains, and there's all these other people who live there, and boys and girls, men and women who are running in that type of situation. So huge credit to them. They're super resilient people.
So one thing that was really interesting about the learning about the documentary, it kind of followed in a way kind of a gonzo journalism thing where you're making a documentary without letting anybody know you're making a documentary because of the danger for the women in Afghanistan. Was that the most difficult part, or what was the most difficult part of filming without letting people know that you're filming?
Yeah, well, that was a huge part of it because of the potential security risk. Obviously, being in Afghanistan, even though we were up in the mountains, it's still a huge risk with the Taliban, being around and potentially, having bombs and so on.
Mhm.
So we couldn't tell anyone that we were going to, first of all, even to run the marathon, and secondly to make the film. And of course, what that caused was getting funding for the film without being able to tell anybody we're going to do a film. And
Mhm.
so we had to basically talk to family and friends and word of mouth to say, look, we want to do this. And fortunately, a company stepped up. A friend of mine, John Wilson, who is co-founder of Viz Communications, a company in Calgary, him and his partner, James McKenzie, stood up and said, we are going to help you do this film. We're going to support the film. And through their contributions, we brought a film crew over and we filmed it there. But it was all under the radar, Greg, all
Mhm.
under the radar.
Uh, So when people talk about going to another country like Afghanistan or to Africa, what they'll often say is, the government may be horrible, but the people themselves are very kind and often very generous. What did you take away personally from Afghanistan, from whether it was the country, the people, the culture?
Well, a couple of things right off the bat. It is an incredibly beautiful country. Now, we didn't see a lot. We went to Kabul, and of course, there's huge challenges in a place like Kabul with the security, with the huge concrete barriers, with the police and the army security there. It's all there. But we visited things like the beautiful mosque, the blue tile mosque, absolutely stunning, and it's been there for centuries. But then we traveled up to Bamiyan and we went to the Bandamir National Park, the only national park in Afghanistan. And there's sapphire blue lakes, sandstone cliffs, beautiful trails, waterfalls. That national park in any other place in the world would have thousands of visitors, coming to it. But
Hmm.
of course, being in Afghanistan, you just get a small handful. The other thing is the mountains. The Hindu Kush Mountains are stunning. But what really struck me was the people. And for example, at the Bandamir National Park, where there are these beautiful lakes, there's also a flotilla of paddle boats, swan paddle boats. And on the weekends, the families come out and they have picnics, and they just want to do what regular people do, and that's just have family time. We met so many people throughout Bamiyan in the streets, in the stalls. They spoke excellent English, and they're just so friendly. And it's just
Hmm.
such a difficult situation that they're in, through no fault of their own, that they just try and survive.
In the screener, a lot of it is to do with the apprehension of people around you to what you're doing. Was that pretty common? I know for both you and Kate, a lot of people were very worried about you going to Afghanistan.
Yeah, huge apprehension about, first of all, going.
Hmm.
No question about it. My wife Sue, was very concerned, and rightly so. And all I could do, and I mentioned it earlier, was try and mitigate the risk. So I signed up
Hmm.
with a group called Untamed Borders, and they do a phenomenal job in having tours, group tours in countries like Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, and with James Wilcox, who runs the organization. They were phenomenal. So I mean, I wouldn't have, I'm not a lone traveler. I wouldn't have gone on my own, but I thought, traveling with them, they got an excellent record. So I felt, mitigating the risk. Yeah, let's do it. Once we were in Afghanistan, we were supported. One group is Free to Run, a group that supports women and girls in conflict countries through sport, and they supported us. And also with the women we met, they were very supportive of what we were doing. We did have security as well on the marathon. We have the soldiers there, so it was, we were covered. We didn't do anything outside of what we were told. We kept a very low profile.
And I remember in the film, it was very shocking to hear that, they could run on that road because it was free of landmines now, and that's just so forward. Like if we run in Canada, we got to watch for traffic. We don't think too much about the landmines underneath the pavement.
Oh, exactly. I mean, it's not even a consideration. You just run on the trail or run on a pathway or run on the road. And as you say, in Afghanistan, the biggest thing they were completing while we were there, they were making Afghan landmine free. There had been security groups come, and they had found basically all the landmines. They were just wrapping it up, and they marked the landmines by, if it was still live, there'd be a red rock. And if it had been detonated, there'd be a white rock. And basically, as you say, we were told, you stick to the road, do not go off the road. And that's what we did. Trust me, I didn't go off that road.
I can imagine. One thing I really liked about the film was you did have to protect the identity of some of the women. And so you used animation to kind of tell their story without showing them. Do people in Canada tend to forget just how difficult life can be for women in places like Afghanistan to do something as simple as just running a marathon?
Well, I think so. Craig. I mean, for me, it was a bit of a shock. When Sue showed me that newspaper article from the Guardian, and I read about Zainab, I didn't put two and two together. I think it opened my eyes to gender inequality in a very specific way. It's something I love to do is running. I take it for granted. In the mornings I get up and I put my runners on and I'm out. I don't even think about all these other issues of security and persecution. And especially, and I'm an old white guy, that's the way it is, but especially for women and girls. I mean, it's just, to me, it's intolerable that they have to put up with this type of persecution because of a gender. And so it really struck a chord with me. And I think, again, in our country, there is still issues. Don't get me wrong. And particularly with women running, maybe at night or, in certain areas, it's still an issue. And let's not forget that. And so it's something that when I talk about the Secret Marathon, yes, I'm talking about Afghanistan, but also, for example, we have the Secret 3K run, where we also talk about inequality in our country. And that exists. Let's not pretend it doesn't.
Absolutely. We talked a lot about the adjustment of going to Afghanistan to run. Was it an adjustment to come back to Canada after running in Afghanistan, to come back to Canada? Like you said, you don't go off the road in Afghanistan. You have much more freedom where you want to run here. So was that kind of like you had to get back into the mindset of, okay, I'm going to be okay running here?
Yeah, it was a really mixed emotion coming back from Afghanistan. I had run with Kubra, and you saw in the film, Kubra is this young woman that I met who wanted to run a marathon, but a bomb had exploded at her school and killed one of her friends. And so she couldn't train for a number of months. And we decided to run together. And so running with Kubra and just the joy she found in doing her marathon. And the other story in the film, Craig, that you've watched, is the story of the family in the caves. This woman is in a cave with her family, and the young girl had brain damage due to an IED, an individual explosive device that blew up near her and caused her brain damage. And when I came back from Canada, I almost felt I let them down. I almost felt like, well, I'm leaving. I can come back to my world of a nice house and living in Cochrane and so on. And they're still living in this cave. This mother and 5 children have spent 12 years in a cave, living in a cave. And so honestly, I had a bit of a guilt feeling. And so it was, mixed emotion, obviously very happy to come back, but the realization that I can come back, I can actually come away from this situation where these other people can't. So, and it still is difficult for me, to be honest, to reconcile that.
Absolutely. So when people watch the documentary, what do you hope they get out of it once they finished watching?
Well, one thing is, I hope they see the amazing resilience of these women and girls and a passion that they want to do something as basic as running and what they will do to achieve that goal. And I just feel these women and girls are an example to the rest of us. Don't get me wrong; we have huge challenges
Hmm.
in our daily lives. Obviously, with COVID, with what's going on, it's huge, and I'm not making it small. Those challenges, but then I think about the women and girls in Afghanistan who are number one just trying to live, just trying to get by, but number two, when they want to do something like running, what they have to overcome, and the strength that they have is an inspiration to me.
Hmm. So you've done quite a bit. You climb Mount Kilimanjaro. You've run a marathon a day for multiple days in a row. Uh, Now that you did Afghanistan, what's next? What's kind of on the horizon? The new challenge ahead for you?
Well, we have this film. The film premiere is coming up of the worldwide premiere of the Secret Marathon film on January the 29th to 31st. So we're super excited about that. I'm working with film director Kate McKenzie and Demand Films. This is going to be a whole new project of delivering films on a platform, but also having the availability of interviewing guests and doing questions and answers. So that's going to be super exciting, having that kind of holistic whole package when it comes to a virtual cinema, as we're calling it. So that's
Hmm.
exciting, and that's coming up at the end of this month. We also have the Secret 3K Run, which is on March the 3rd, which is a virtual event all around the world. So again, we're going to be celebrating um, running and supporting women and girls around the world, which is great. I have the Secret Marathon book, which is out,
Hmm.
which I'm happy to share if anyone's interested in kind of the behind the scenes story. That's
Hmm.
kind of super cool because in the book I have 6 interviews. I have 6 chapters from the women and girls who ran in Afghanistan in their own words. So that's kind of an insight as to where they are.
Hmm.
But what's coming up for me later on this year, actually the end of April, is my next book, which is The Ageless Athlete. And that tells a story of me challenging myself with runs that I did 15 years ago and see if I can beat the time. So my next challenge is, can my current self beat my former self? So yeah, it's kind of an interesting journey. Yeah.
Absolutely, not conquering a mountain this time, but conquering time. That's I
No,
like
just want to beat
that.
myself. Yeah, conquering time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
And then the last question is just how can people find the film? How can they find out about you, get in touch with you, learn more about the things that you do or about the film?
Sure. So if they want to go to thesecretmarathon.com, the website, they can check there, and there's access to the tickets there. And I think that's a super way of doing it. Or they can get hold of me, martinparnell.com, and see my website, and there'll be availability there for tickets as well.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Martin Parnell, and if you did, please leave a rating and review. You can also visit my website where you'll find all my podcast episodes, as well as hundreds of articles on Canada's history. Just go to canadaehx.com. And again, you can support the podcast for as little as $3 a month. Just go to patreon.com/CanadaEHX, just like all of these wonderful patrons have. And I apologize if I mispronounce any names. Gary Dolovich, Nick Zinri, Pamela Elder, Shannon Marshall, Clinton Martinez, Dimitri Shove, Aaron O'Hara Myers, Robert Dunseith, Todd Casey, Catherine Roy, Luke S., Vic Hedges, JP Bear, Jason Hall, Phil Maynard, Spencer M., and Iris Gray. You can also find me on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/CanadianHistoryX. And I'm on Twitter. Just go to Craig Baird, CraigBaird. I'm also on Instagram, and you just have to look for Bairdo37. Thanks. We'll see you again next time.